Richplanet TV is sponsored by PrepperSafeHomes.co.uk, manufacturers of instant protecting you, your family and your home.
Triangle sightings, I've got about 40 black triangle sightings, and we're going to be looking mainly at those today. The large black triangle, typically people say it's as big as a football pitch, and you're going to see the testimonies in a moment. They do seem to come in smaller varieties ranging from 30 feet up to 100 feet. So the black triangle UFO, this is a typical artist's impression of what people see, and the gentleman's just come up to me with an artist's impression of what he saw. It's almost identical to this. He's done his own artist's impression. He's seen one of these craft. As I say, they have 3 lights in the corners, they have often the light in the middle, and witnesses will always describe them as being silent, sometimes a low humming sound, but certainly not engine noises or propellers. Okay. Now the earliest case that I have in my files is from 1976, and they do seem to have become prevalent since the late 70s, with the 1981 Hudson Valley flap, which was in New York State. Lots of people saw huge black triangles with coloured lights underneath them hovering above houses and roads, and there's films being made about this incident. Skipping forward to 1990 in Belgium, the Belgian Air Force picked up these triangular objects on radar, and this is an actual photograph of one of them. And these are witness drawings, people who saw these craft in Belgium. So they sent out F-16 fighters to try and intercept these objects, triangular craft, and they couldn't catch them. They were chasing them for days. They were outmaneuvered every time. Now what happened after the flap died down, the Belgian Air Force were completely perplexed at this. They didn't know the origin of these craft, and they could outmaneuver F-16 fighters. So they took the airborne radar tapes that had tracked these objects, and they gave them to this guy, Professor Emil Schweitzer, who's one of Belgium's leading radar experts. He examined the data, and he concluded that these were real objects that the F-16s were fighting, they were tracking, and that they weren't radar anomalies of any kind. So he had analysis done on the data, and he describes, I've got a full video of Schweitzer explaining this. Some of it's in the film. At one point he says that the triangle's moving along horizontally like this, and it pulls a corner and goes straight up, and at that point of the corner it pulls an acceleration of 30 G. So if anyone was in that craft, they'd be dead, and it would shake most aircraft apart if it was to move in that fashion. It goes straight up, and then it does an almost 180-degree U-turn, and then it comes straight down to the ground at 900 knots. Okay. Now the British Ministry of Defence requested Schweitzer come to the UK and give them a briefing on the dynamics of these triangles. All right, and this was found out because a researcher called Harry Harris, who was a prominent UFO researcher in the UK in 1991, he found out which hotel he was staying at when he was over in the UK to give this MOD briefing. So he managed to get an interview with him. It's on a camcorder, but Schweitzer spills quite a lot of it. And in one part of it he says, I don't see how we can do this with current human technology, the dynamics that he describes. So, but this is something that the Ministry of Defence have never admitted to. This hasn't come out in their top secret files that they release. So when they say that they're not interested, they are interested in UFOs. Okay. There was a flap of black triangles in 1988 in Staffordshire. This was at a place called Cannock Chase. And there was another incident in 1997 at Sheffield. This was a black silent triangle which travelled south next to the town of Sheffield. And this has been tirelessly researched by Max Burns. And he's uncovered evidence that, again, military jets were scrambled to chase this black triangle. And one of them actually crashed. Max Burns has got aircraft parts from that crash, and he's also discovered the place where it came down. Now there was a big cover-up over this as well, and questions were asked in Parliament about this. Okay, now a lot of what I'm going to show you from now on is witness testimony, so I'm going to give my voice a rest and just show you some of the interviews that I've been doing over the last few months.
And I noticed a yellowy orangey light just to my side there, and I thought, oh, that's...
Okay, I also thought I would compare notes with three of the UK's most prominent UFO researchers to get their angle on black triangle cases, and this is just a tip of the iceberg of their cases.
I dare say if you sorted all out the triangular reports, we'd have quite a phenomenal number of sightings of the black triangle, and they're in a marked police vehicle, and they see in the area of Northolt, Middlesex, a huge black triangular object which he describes as the size of 3 football pitches. Right. And I said, well, how do you know it was that big? And he says, because it was all the 3 football pitches.
Well, he said it was something around that sort of size, you know, right. almost the size of a football pitch.
Right. And basically it was no noise, huge proportions, low to the ground, as low as 50 feet at one point. And it was just motionless, hanging there, and then seen for a few minutes, and then gone. In
most cases, they're either completely silent or sometimes emit a sort of low humming type sound, or sometimes.
Right. And the amazing thing is that in the 1990s, they were coming over majestically over the landscape, as if completely impervious of what was happening below them. But they were coming over, moving ever so slow, as you said before, with a light at each corner and the big light in the middle. About 24 police officers across 6 counties had basically tracked 1 or 2 objects. We saw initially what we thought was a very bright spherical light travelling relatively low in the sky. The object was travelling north to south, having come over the sea at Bideford Bay. We stopped and got out of our police car, and as the object approached us from directly in front of us, we realised that this object was connected in some way to 2 duller lights which were travelling behind on each side of the main bright light that was effectively in a triangular formation. It travelled fast and most strangely was completely silent. It was a clear, still night. The object was enormous in dimensions overall and was like nothing we'd ever seen or experienced. Overall dimensions approximately the size of a football pitch.
It's amazing how many times people use that.
So they saw in the distance 3 sort of orangey red coloured lights in a triangular shape moving in their direction. Now as these lights got closer, they realised it was this black triangular shaped object with these lights attached, appeared to be on the underside at each corner. And they also said at a distance that it was doing this kind of weird wavy type motion. It looked like it was sort of shifting backwards and forwards. Now it's possible that it was some sort of field that was around the object that was causing this distortion, and I've looked into other cases where this same distortion effect has been seen, but there's also many cases where the distortion effect isn't seen, so you know, it's possible some kind of flight mode that they enter where it looks like this. Now this craft continued to get closer to them, and it actually came down in the road and hovered about 10 foot. It was within 40 feet of them, so it was very close. And it hovered about 10 foot off the ground, and they didn't really know what to do. They stood there staring at it.
Yeah, and bear in mind, this is just the tip of an iceberg of cases, all right? I've just presented a few of my witnesses there. Okay, let me just go back to that slide. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm not bothered whether you think these are military craft or alien craft or a combination of the two. Because what I think, and I'm talking about specifically UK cases over the last sort of 10 years, I'm not talking about the worldwide phenomenon, events such as Roswell or Rendlesham, which to me clearly show some sort of outside technology, i.e. extraterrestrial possibly. I'm talking about recent UK stuff, these triangles that are being seen now. Because I think the question, who do they belong to, needs to be answered second. I think the first question we need to ask is, where are they going to? Because there's far too much witness testimony to poo-poo the idea that these craft are in our skies. They're definitely in our skies. I've got so much witness testimony, you'd have to be in denial in order to say, well, I don't believe these silent triangles are in the sky. They're definitely there, right? So, as I'm saying, I think the best question to ask is, where are they going when they're not in the sky? If we can find the answer to that, you can possibly find out what's inside them.
You know, there is a number of cases where the military has tried to intercept these objects, so clearly they are interested in them.
Right.
Why would they want to intercept something if they knew what it was? Sometimes they've shown very unusual characteristics, such as cloaking, sort of materialising or dematerialising, sometimes in a clear sky. Main argument really against them being military would be just the advanced characteristics sometimes displayed.
Where they go in, what they're doing, where they're stored. Well, I suppose if you thought it was man that would created them, then they would probably be in a hangar somewhere. But I don't believe that, and I do think they're ET, and I just think that's another aspect of ET.
But I'm trying to steer you towards, when they're not on display, where are they? Where, do you think there are bases?
Well, I think there probably are bases around the world.
ET bases?
Yeah, I think there probably are, because there's still very remote areas. I think the sea is there's been so many sightings of underwater objects.
I've had some cases where they've seen UFOs come up out of and enter the sea.
Right.
Which have been interesting, not flying triangle cases.
If these triangles have got that kind of technology, then maybe they're flying around and we just don't see them, and then they decloak, for want of a better phrase, and they're there.
If we're being visited by extraterrestrials, which I believe that we are, I believe that there's numerous species visiting the Earth, and I believe they've been here a long, long time and will continue to be here for a long, long time. I believe that there's some sort of ongoing program that they're working on with the human race, and possibly developing us. Now, it stands to reason that they would have to be somewhere. They're unlikely to just be flying around all the time. So therefore, I'd certainly look into there being a number of bases, possibly here on the planet, maybe up on the moon, that they would use to house these craft.
Right. If we consider undersea or underground bases, you wouldn't be able to pinpoint any areas that you think are more likely than others.
No, no. I think if I was going to have a base underwater, I'd put it in a really deep trench where nobody goes.
There's a number of cases linking with missing time or sort of even mind control. Sometimes aspects of that seem to be involved. And also I've dealt with a number of cases that directly link flying triangle craft with the abduction phenomena.
Right.
So these bases may have been on the planet for a long time, and there's a lot of talk about bases in the depth of the oceans. That would be a very, very good place to put them, because it's somewhere out of reach of human civilization.
So they're not being very specific about where they think bases might be. So what I thought I would do, I thought I would take my cases, about 40 in all, of black triangles, and just plot them on a map of the UK and see if there's a pattern emerges. Now there does seem to be a concentration of cases in the West Yorkshire-Lancashire border region. We've had common sightings in Derbyshire, Staffordshire, Lincolnshire, also East Yorkshire, but without doubt there's definitely a concentration in that area, and it is home to one of the most notorious places, Todmorden. Now, some UFO researchers, I've heard them actually describe this path here from sort of Hull across to the other side as UFO Alley. And as I said, it's home to the infamous Todmorden. So what I did was I thought, well, let's hone in on this area and see if I can find black triangle cases specifically over the last few years. And what I did was I went on another website that's been logging cases, and I also researched local news reports of UFO sightings. Now this map shows a series of arrows. These arrows indicate where a black triangle, silent black triangle craft has been seen moving in a particular direction. The triangles show where black triangles have been seen hovering. So we've got 9 cases in the last 2 years in and around Todmorden. This is the Pennine Way. It's a popular hiking route. Now you'll notice I've also marked on the map Ogden Reservoir, which is just a few miles west of the area. Something significant happened there in 1980. This book by Jenny Randall, written in 1983, depicts Alan Godfrey's police car and the UFO that he saw in 1980, very famous alleged abduction case of a police officer. Now in that book there's another incident which I'm very interested in, which occurred, as I say, at Ogden Reservoir. On Thursday the 14th of August 1980, Andrew Nightingales and a friend were fishing in the Ogden Reservoir at Helmshore, a small new estate near Rawtenstall about 4 miles west of Bacup. It was 8:50 p.m. Suddenly a circular row of red lights, they think about 9 in all, appeared on the surface of the water just out from the bank. Thinking it was something above them casting its reflection, they quickly glanced upwards. Nothing was there. When they looked back at the water, the lights had vanished. However, within moments, they reappeared, pulsing this time. It was quite clear that they were watching a large circular object underneath the surface of the reservoir. Naturally, they began to panic and fled from the water's edge, dropping behind their expensive fishing tackle at the mercy of any passers-by. As one of them put it afterwards, there was no way I would go back there until it was daylight. All right, so there was a lady in the nearby village also witnessed a UFO with a ring of red lights around it on that night. So we've got a UFO in this reservoir in 1980. And just look how many reservoirs there are in this area. There's loads of them, water features. Now, the area north of Todmorden, it's one of the largest unpopulated areas in the UK, and if you've been there before, the terrain is extremely mountainous. Right? There's lots of hills that craft would be able to hide behind. So, as I said, there's areas in here that are miles and miles from any road. So it would be a great location. So I'm going to speculate here. I'm speculating just based on this evidence if there's a base in the UK, because as I said, there's not a single piece of witness testimony of a silent black triangle either entering or leaving a UK military base. Okay, so if they are going somewhere on land in the UK, my guess is there's some base somewhere around here, and that they're using it to access some of the other areas that the triangles are commonly seen in.
Richplanet TV is sponsored by PrepperSafeHomes.co.uk. InstaShield for your quick, simple home protection.